A guy who's worked for the DOJ for a long time was just arrested for being a pedophile. Yep. Timothy Parsons, who, you want to know something crazy? I Googled Timothy Parsons to get more info here to see like what department of the DOJ that he works in, which I could not find. There are multiple Timothy Parsons in the last couple of years who have been arrested for being pedophiles. Fun fact. So if your name is Timothy Parsons, I am so sorry, but your SEO is bad. Timothy, you Google Timothy Parsons and there's multiple Timothy Parsons in just the last couple of years who have been arrested and charged with possession and possession of CSAM, like being pedophiles. Yeah. A horrible fact. Horrible. Very cursed name. I think you have to just change your name. I want one day where we don't find out about a new pedo. Yeah. Wouldn't that be so fun for a change? Wouldn't it be so great for a change to not live in this world where like every day we find out a new pedophile, especially a pedo, finding out that it's somebody who was in not just close proximity to children, because here's the thing. The reason that Timothy Parsons got caught is there was another guy last year who is a psychotherapist who specializes in working with kids. And he was the one who was distributing this CSAM, and he distributed it to Timothy Parsons. So they caught that guy who, charged him with possession and distribution of CSAM. And that's how they caught Timothy Parsons. So here you have a guy who works for the DOJ who was getting CSAM from a guy who works with children in a therapist capacity. So it's not just that it's like, wow, look at all these pedophiles. It's also, look at all these pedophiles with billions of dollars, with so much political influence in career positions where they are either around children, where they are like, I don't know exactly what Timothy Parsons, what specific department he was in at the DOJ, but the DOJ right now that is telling us that, oh, there's simply nothing to do about the entire Epstein associate map here. But, arresting and charging Timothy Parsons means that this government is in fact capable, or the FBI is in fact capable of arresting government officials who are pedophiles. So, yep. He was a legal staffer with the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. I guess I was trying to figure out what cases he had personally worked on. I mean, just the fact that it's the DOJ alone, but of course, this man who's worked for the Department of Justice for years, was found out to be a pedophile. Last night, I heard that Bill Maher, the PDF file, and Hollywood do know about it for a long time. Last night, did you hear it from somebody? Now, I ain't about to level any Bill Maher's a pedophile claims, because that man is that man. He's definitely a creep. He definitely loves to date younger women. I do know that. We've talked about how sus he is for a while now. Yes, it's one of those, you know who Bill Maher is the type of person who's like, I'm not a pedophile because I'm into girls who are 16 and 17, or like fresh 18-year-olds. It's legal. Like the type of energy where you're arguing constantly for like over age of consent. He's such a creep. Bill Maher's going to take over Last Week Tonight. Don't put that out there. Don't put that out there. Actually, it's pedophilia. Yes, which is something that people who defend pedophiles love to be saying. They always hit you with that, and then I always think of the Gianmarco clip. Yeah. It's totally fine because because these guys were abusing women who were 18 or 19 years old, no matter that they were trafficked by Epstein as well. Like, let's not forget about that aspect. Just because a woman is 18 or older doesn't mean that it's fine. Are we forgetting the part of the sex trafficking operation that was at play, is still at play? A bartender said Bill loved coming with different underage black girl sex workers. Wow. Somebody that works as a bartender. Here's what I will say. And again, those are not my claims. Okay? Those are not my claims. Let the record show. Those are not my claims. But as somebody who worked in nightlife, somebody who worked in the service industry, often that's who has the info. That's who sees shit going on. And there were a lot of nights that I would see celebrities, men who were well into their adult years, who were hitting on girls who were maybe 18. I don't know, because a big thing is promoters will bring girls in who are underage, like definitely under the age of 21, and then they hand out fake IDs to them in the parking lot. And it was always a question of like, is this girl even 18 years old? Fucking crazy. I will never forget when Josh Duhamel, right after he and Fergie were separated / like either they had been in divorce or they were getting divorced, and it had to do with infidelity. It's one of the reasons. I remember he came in the club one night, like total divorced dad energy, and he ended up leaving with this girl who looked really young. And again, maybe they are 18 years old or 19 years old, but there is still problems there. Okay. When you have a man who's 45 who has money and fame and like clear power differential, but this is the area that's hard to, unfortunately, change the culture on. Although granted, you got plenty of people who are straight up defending actual pedophiles. You know, the Michael Tracys of the world. So it's not even like we've all agreed, hey, this thing is bad, because you still got people fighting on that. But it's the larger cultural issues around power differentials, consent, men who it's been, you have you have the longstanding argument based in biology that men are attracted to much younger women and girls because of biology. Yeah, pay no attention to the fact that a lot of that comes from when it was only men who were like child development specialists working in these fields, where they were the ones producing this research that has obviously been debunked in this modern era, but is still used by a lot of people to justify why some 50, 60-year-old man just has to date a 20-year-old. Why 18-year-old girls are... there's a biological imperative here for a 60-year-old man to be with an 18-year-old girl.
Thank you. Neither of us has very good taste in music. So whenever we're about to make love, I put on a random Spotify playlist. And a couple months ago, I put on an R&B playlist. I was feeling ambitious. And R. Kelly came on.
I've shown this clip so
You've
many
heard the
times.
news? And my girlfriend was like, oh, no, we cannot listen to R. Kelly. R. Kelly is a pedophile. And now here's the thing. And just hear me out for 1 second. Technically speaking, R. Kelly is not a pedophile. Just give me 1 second. I promise this goes away. Just hear me out. The term pedophile refers to people who are attracted to those that are prepubescent. Then there's something called a hebophile. That's people who are attracted to those in the early stages of puberty, like 11, 12, 13, 14. And then there's something called an ephebophile. That's people who are attracted to those in the later stages of puberty, like 15, 16, 17, 18. But I think the reason we don't make those distinctions is because it's very hard to explain the difference without sounding like a pedophile.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Okay. There are a lot of men who are attracted to prepubescent girls, but may not necessarily act on it. You know what I mean? So they may be dating an 18-year-old, let's say they're 57 years old, maybe dating an 18-year-old, but that does not mean that they do not, that they don't have some sick personal, I guess, attraction to that prepubescent look. Estimates say it's like 1 out of 10 are attracted and don't act on it, which is insane. Yeah. They would go younger if it was, yes, these are the types of men who, if it were legal, and that's why they're also always arguing about age of consent. And you've got, Republicans who are trying to get rid of age of consent or lower it to 12 years old. And in some cases, they've been successful at lowering the age of consent, and trust that they would absolutely go for even younger. And this is why I always talk about the persistent cultural issues that are at play with how all the conversation around Epstein and his associates has played out, where, like I mentioned, there are still so many men who who believe that it's like a biological imperative to be with a girl who is 18 years old. Like they'll hide behind that. But it's the way that for girls, their youth is so prized. It's why the concept of taking virginity still exists, which is very gross and is very rooted in patriarchal society. This concept that a girl's virginity is so precious. It's like you see these dads and they'll post a TikTok with a gun and it's like protecting my daughter's virginity, that kind of shit. It's the way that something like that with young girls is like oh my God, what was that deep dive that we did? The purity balls. Yes, the purity culture. Hugh Hefner's seen so many people during his life Yeah, and it's also just how we have such cultural normalization of men dating a lot younger than them. Whereas, in the rare flip around where you have a woman who is in the position of having been the adult who was grooming or molding a young person, such as in the relationship of Aaron Taylor Johnson and his wife. She was in her 40s and he was a teenager when they first met because she was directing a film that he was in. So there's that power difference as well. But people recognize, like, ew, that's not good. And all the time, for years, people have called out Sam Taylor Johnson grooming Aaron Taylor Johnson and getting together with him when she was in her 40s and he was a teenager. But that's because that is more rare, and that goes against what is normalized and acceptable, which is men dating adult men dating teenage girls. Aaliyah was 14 years old when she was with R. Kelly. Yeah, like pretty much every major rock star in the 70s who just had a 14-year-old girlfriend who was, their parents just kind of went, yep. I mean, this got brought up when Priscilla, the film, came out, and it did depict Priscilla being 14 years old when she met Elvis for the first time, Steven Tyler. Steven Tyler had a 14-year-old girlfriend, which I don't even. he had a 14-year-old. So many of them. So many. Like, it was just incredibly normal and acceptable. And even though today there would be more backlash and hopefully legal involvement if a 50-year-old man is found to be with a 14-year-old girl, or just, not even 50, like an adult male with a child. But also we're seeing how, with the reality of the Epstein files being as clear as day and nothing being done about it. Right. With this government, I don't know. You ever listen to the lyrics of Don't Stand So Close to Me? As the singer is a teacher who's trying to stave off one of his high school students' sexual advances, but he really doesn't want to. Ew. Gross. A lot of this stuff has to come from the fact that these men are insanely rich and just have very strange life experiences compared to the normal person. So they develop these crazy ideas that they can do these kinds of things. Definitely not giving them a pass, just trying to understand how people get like this. Well, no. Here's what you need to understand. This is not just men who are rich and famous. It's just that when men are rich and famous, there's a bigger spotlight there. It tends to be something that people pay attention or are aware of because of the element of fame. Like, we are a celebrity obsessed culture. We, so much news revolves around celebrities and celebrity culture. So it's not just something that men who have a ton of money or are part of the famous elite world are committing these kinds of actions. Oh, yeah, David and that poor kid. Yeah, I mean, that's ongoing right now, them investigating him. I love that we're having these convos now. Weird fact, age gaps are demonstrably traumatic to the woman, even if she's older or younger. Being bummy your daughter harms them long term. Yeah, I mean, I get that sometimes people do the problematic age gap. And I think some people mean it as a joke, but some people don't. And it's not really, it doesn't really pertain to the situation that they're saying that that is a problematic age gap. But there is the huge reality that these age gaps often with the older adult man and younger woman exist because of how our culture and society has shaped itself around allowing young girls to be, allowing children to be used by adults, and living in a patriarchal world that dictates men are allowed to do these things, especially men with power, especially men who are at the top. And children are they're just commodified. They are objects for pleasure, for commodification, for whatever means other than just getting to be children. There was this TikTok creator that made a comment saying that patriarchy unchecked is pedophilia. Profound, really. And yeah, I mean, so much of this comes from the cultural belief that women's value is in their youth, and also, of course, beauty. But like beauty and value are attributed to that youth. So a girl who is 16 years old, her value being in that she is 16 years old, that she is she's a child, but that has never meant she is afforded the protections in this world for being a child. It means that she is viewed as having value because of her youth. If you're under 18, American society basically treats you like your property, which I think normalized behavior. Speaking of, I mean, girls were sold off, still are, but that was a very that's what the that's the patriarchal constructs of marriage. The way that girls were literally just sold off for whatever, money, land, cattle, the concept of the dowry. Yeah. Alliances. That Lil Wayne clip talking about having his daughter at 15 still haunts me. Lil Wayne had his daughter when he was 15. Oh my God. Singer David confirmed his target. Yep. This is from a week ago. So he has not been charged. And I believe that they are trying to get all their ducks in a row to have this be essentially as much of a slam dunk. So he is the target of a grand jury investigation into the apparent murder of a 14-year-old girl. His name was Celeste, whose remains were found in his car in September. The filings were released after David's family were summoned by a California court to testify before the grand jury. He has not been charged or officially named as a suspect in the case, and an indictment has not been announced. Grand jury proceedings remain ongoing. David has not commented on the case, but his representatives previously said he was cooperating with police. This poor child, she was failed by so many people. Yeah, so that's what's what's going on here. And I know people keep being like, has he not been charged? Why has he not been arrested? And again, I think that they're really trying to get all their, as much evidence lined up. And they absolutely believe that it's him. And all signs from just kind of an outside perspective point to him being the him being the culprit here. It's important to note that the court system takes forever in practice, but it seems like there's a preponderance of evidence, so it's just up to time at this point. Yeah. Americans don't believe that their children should have autonomy and some kind of independence. I'm Black, as you know. My upbringing was very isolated. I got told constantly, I brought you into this world and I can take you out. That to me says you don't really give a shit about me. Yeah, so there's definitely that in American culture, how kids turn 18 and we just, expect them to be full adults and be off on their own. And then you go over to, say, Europe, and you see how these are, families that all live together. You've got the grandparents, you've got parents, you've got the kids, even when they are into their 20s. Like, there's just much more of that cohesive family unit. There's no like somebody turns a certain age and then boop, that's it, you're gone. Never to return. Go off into society. You don't really have the in American culture, the kind of multi-generational household, unless, we're talking about immigrant communities, people who that's how they culturally view family. And go off and make money. Yes, go off, make money, and good luck. The other thing I will say is that it's not just how American families have internalized that, but on top of it, there's also there's also, of course, the differences in who gets to be a child and who doesn't. When you are Black or brown in this country, when you come from an impoverished background, when you are, say, a lot of the girls who were targeted and preyed on by Epstein and Maxwell and their world, those were children who had their childhood stripped from them, either due to the way that society treats them, or due to issues that happened in their homes. A lot of these girls who were already victims of abuse, usually by those closest to them, by the time they ended up in Epstein's world. Yeah, if you are poor, if you are Black or brown, the intersections here of class and race, and how that further strips children of their right to be children. The way that the media loves to report on child prostitutes, still putting the onus on children who are being exploited sexually, or the way that they call Black boys, often will refer to them as men. It's like, oh, this child who was killed by the cops, this Black child who's killed by the cops, but you wouldn't know from the way the media reported on it that he was a child. Yeah, a young man, an 8-year-old man. Politicians keep using the term young women, and it's like, no, they were children. Yeah, and I think obviously in the when you look at when you look at the victims of Epstein and his associates, there were some who were over the age of 18. There were some who were under the age of 18. And I think there's kind of just been this young women label that's been used broadly. I do think it's important to be like using the word child to reinforce, to emphasize the you would think like you understand how heinous these crimes are, but like just to get people to fully understand how these were girls that were targeted. And a lot of times too, they were groomed when they were teenagers, when they were minors, and then got to a point where they were in their 20s, but they had been exploited and groomed and abused for years. So a lot of these people who are trying to lessen the seriousness of Epstein's operation, they keep trying to point to survivors of Epstein who were in their 20s, where, again, still victims of sex trafficking, okay? Still victims of abuse. That doesn't change just because they are of quote unquote legal age. But also a lot of them were teenagers when they were initially targeted, when they were, had Maxwell or Epstein or whoever else set their sights on them and then groomed them. It's like, sure, by the time, I don't know, like they either reported something to the police or just the age that they were being what's been reported on by the media, no matter what, they are still victims, but also keeping in mind that a lot of them were groomed for years. So being 21, like by the time Virginia Giuffre got out, when she went to Thailand to go train as a masseuse, and that was her excuse to try to get away from them, she was 19 years old. So she was of legal age, but she had been groomed for a few years at that point. When they first saw her, she was 16 years old working at Mar-a-Lago, and Ghislaine Maxwell walked up to her, and that was that. This is why the rich/powerful are destabilizing governments around the world. Many e-victims are from post-Soviet countries that were still developing after the USSR broke apart. Yeah, that's another part of it, is how many of the girls didn't speak English, came from another country, came from a situation where they were incredibly desperate and vulnerable, like just so many degrees of vulnerability. I think about that. So recently, y'all, I was at a karaoke club, and at the end of, just a karaoke spot, I was doing karaoke with my friends. And at the end of the night, suddenly the police came in. And for a second, I thought that it was ICE, like they were going through these karaoke rooms, hunting down immigrants. But what it was is that they were there to try and bust any of these, try to bust any rooms where this trafficking was going on. Now, we were at a karaoke spot where it doesn't happen. Wait, were you with Leslie? I wasn't with Leslie, but I found out that she was in the room next to us. Did she tell that story? Yeah, this is like a karaoke spot where none of this shit happens, and that's why we go to this place. And I found out that Leslie and some people were in one of the rooms at this karaoke bar. Okay, so anyway, so they come in and they separate the women from the men, and the men stay in the room, and then they take us women into another room, and they're not saying anything, but I know exactly what was happening once I realized, like, okay, it wasn't ICE. Oh, they're trying to bust a potential trafficking operation here. And so we're sitting in a room, and they started pulling in women from other rooms, and they're just sitting there. And so I'm explaining to everyone what's happening. And I can see the female officer who's in charge of guarding us, like, at the door, and she's kind of nodding along. And then, yeah, then this girl I know comes in, and she's like, y'all, yeah, she's like, don't worry, you guys, they're just trying to see if we're fucking hookers. And the cop is like mad that my friend says this. I'm like, well, I mean, she points to me and she goes, well, she was explaining it. I said, well, yeah, that's just kind of a crude way of what I was explaining, but it's essentially, yeah, that they are trying to verify if we actually know these guys or if we are here for sexual purposes. And the reason I know this too, not just because of understanding sex trafficking, but because when I worked for 1 week in karaoke clubs, I came to understand that that's what this world absolutely can be. It's not always the case that karaoke club hostesses are caught in sex trafficking operations, but a lot of times it is. And I found that out in a real rough way when I spent 1 week working as a karaoke club hostess. And the way that it was pitched to me is I had just moved to Los Angeles. I needed a side job. And this was before I started working in clubs. So I was like finishing up my political work from Chicago, was doing some other side jobs. And I met these guys and they said, hey, we are starting a new company and we need hostesses. And I was like, great. I've worked as a waitress. I'm an entertainer. And they're like, yeah, you just basically host karaoke parties. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds easy enough. And they were like, yeah, you can make it's $40 an hour. It's like, oh my God. I mean, that was astronomical. $40 an hour? Holy shit. So I remember the first night they were like, yeah, just meet at this Denny's parking lot and then we'll all go to the clubs together. And I was like, okay, get in a literal white rapist van. Not kidding you. I see this van and I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm in my little shitty Toyota car in the parking lot. And so the way they explain it is they're like, we'll go from club to club. And when you get in, they'll tell you rooms that are available for like hosts. So you basically go, and if you get picked to be the hostess, then just text us, let us know. And then it's like it's like $40 and no. Here's what it was. It's $120 an hour. This is what I found out too. It's $120 an hour, but they took 2/3 of it. They took $80 and then we got $40 an hour. So I remember I get dropped off at the first club. I'm like, okay. And we go into this like waiting area. No good story I've ever started at the Clark Street Denny's. This was a Denny's in K-Town. So I think it was on like Western Avenue. So I go and there's a bevy of young women and they're all dressed, like you would at a Miami nightclub, not how you would dress for a karaoke club. And I could immediately see the different groupings. It's like, okay, here's the Korean girls, here's the Chinese girls, here's the Russian girls, here's the Ukrainian girls, like literally every color of the rainbow. And then there's me. And so I remember going into the first room and I was like, what is happening here? This situation's very Yakuza. And we go in, and so like sometimes they would just straight up ignore you, and you're like, oh, okay, like that's fine. Sometimes they would go literally just point to you, be like, okay, I guess it's me. I'm now the hostess of this room. This feels very dehumanizing to just be pointed at. So I would learn that sometimes you'd go into a room and the men would only want Korean girls who were from Korea, like hardly spoke English. Then you'd go into a room and they might prefer Russian girls. So the reason that I didn't last long was because, one, I already was going, this is really sketchy. This is very sus. I think there's some shit going on here, or I could see the possibility of it being like illegal and like in the world of trafficking, which I understood more later because I was 24 years old at the time, fresh in Los Angeles, or I was 23, fresh in Los Angeles, and I was like, oh, I don't know. So it was after I got assaulted and I punched this guy in the face. That was my final straw, because what I realized too is these men expect that when you are the hostess of the room, that they can just violate you, that you will sit on their lap, that you will kiss them, that you will do like whatever. They can just grab you, they can touch you. And so I got out. And luckily I was able to get out, and I kind of think back on that time and I'm like, how many of those women didn't have that ability, whether because they needed the money, whether because they were like, for the reasons that we have talked about, say in the Epstein case here. I just wonder with some of those women, what their situations were, where they are now, and if, like, I just wonder, what bad happened to them, which just is heartbreaking to think about. And for me, it's like I thought this was just a hostess job. I tried it. I realized no. And I was able to leave. And I was also able to, and that final night, like, protect myself. And then I remember I went and told one of the guys who works at the club what happened. I was like, I'm fucking out of here. So anyway, why did I start talking about that? So I, for a long time, could not go into karaoke clubs in Koreatown, certain ones, because I would have flashbacks. And as I got older, I realized just how insidious this shit was. And it was hard for me. Like, I would have these flash memories, and I would just be like, I don't want to be here. But this place that I went to, which is not that kind of place at all, when the cops came in and when I realized what was happening, it just kind of all brought me back to years and years ago, when I, for less than a week, was involved in what absolutely, I'm sure, was a situation where a lot of women were not there we're not there like truly consensually. And anyway, so what they did was, too, they had us wait in the room. They were like, do you have ID? Do you speak English? And there were some girls in there who didn't speak English, and they were really scared. And I don't know what their situation was, but that's just like a scary thing to be experiencing. And then with the guys, with my friends in the room, they kept asking, like, how do you know these girls? And half of them, like half our group are couples. So they literally like pulled up their phones and showed, yeah, she's my phone screen. that's my girlfriend. She's the person on my screen. But I remembered too, when I worked in clubs, that they would tell us, when you get in the room, get the number of the person that you're with and send them a text and be like, hey, what you guys doing? And I realized later that was because in case the cops do come in, that's proof showing, oh, no, we all know each other. We're all friends. Like, we're all just here hanging out. Nothing illicit, nothing, no sex in exchange for money happening here. Note to self, karaoke at home. Yeah, I mean, karaoke can be very fun, but there's also, like with a lot of things, the seedier side to it. This is the kind of shit you don't forget, no matter how brief it was. 5 hours can feel like a lifetime depending on what's happening. Yeah, and also considering my final night, and like the reason that I finally bounced was because I literally got assaulted and had to fight this drunk, incredibly drunk man off of me. And it is something where, I don't know, like you get older, and as I've been really just talking a lot about all the Epstein shit and trying to kind of explain how culturally where we are at, where we've been, always been, and why this is the reality. It is like, oh my God, as a woman, you just realize how many situations in your life, especially when you're younger, you're just exposed and exploited. And if you make it through in as close to one piece as you can, it feels like you're lucky. It does. It feels like not just lucky. Obviously, for me, I was in a situation where I had resources, right? Like, this was not something that I had to keep working in this job, or else, I was going to be on the streets. Like, I was fine. Like, I've always been, even when I was in my broke era, I have always been still in a privileged financial position with a family that is a support system for me, versus like a lot of girls who do end up trapped and in these exploitative situations. This is true, and even making it through, often than not, there was still some kind of exploitation happening, for sure. I mean, and even with the family I was born into, the environment that I grew up in, still, like, it had to deal with so much shit, and was just. I remember being a child, and adult men would cross the street to tell me how much they loved China. To be like, you're so beautiful, you Oriental little girl. Come with me. Straight up. These men would cross the street. I remember my little sister one time, she'd been taking the Greyhound, I think, to visit a friend of hers. And there was the guy who sat down next to her, and he basically was like, propositioning her, and she goes, I think she was like 16 or 17, tells him that, thinking that that's gonna cause him to go bye-bye. And he was like, that's okay. Seriously. And then, oh my God, I saw this TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen, I don't know if this is a TikTok thing where basically young people do a trauma dump candy salad. I don't know if this is a TikTok format. Have you seen this? It is. Okay. The trauma candy salad, which I had never heard of, was not aware of. It's been a thing for like 2 years. Okay, so I watched this one.
My dad beat my mom in the shower, causing her to take her 3 kids and leave. And I brought the bowl.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and I gave my ex $400 to help pay for his insurance, and he didn't pay me back, and then he cheated on me. And I brought the peach rings.
Hi, I'm Greta, and when I was 8, my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I brought the nerd clusters.
Hi, I'm Carol, and when I was 7 years old, I was sent to Alaska to visit my dad for the summer. 2 days in, he abandoned me to go fishing, and I haven't seen him since. And he's currently in jail for drinking and driving, and I brought the Skittles.
Also, Carol, every single time Carol comes back in the video, I like geared up. I was like, oh God. Oh no, what's Carol gonna drop now?
I'm Hannah, and one time when I was on break at work, this guy followed me out and kept telling me how beautiful I was. And when I told him I was a minor, he said that nobody had to know, and then he kept persisting, and I kept saying no. And then he told me he'd come back for me in a few months, and I brought the high shoes.
Hi, I'm Greta, and my mom is dead, and I brought the sweet tart ropes.
Hi, I'm Carol, and in the same summer that my father abandoned me, my aunt, who was on crack, had a boyfriend who was also on crack, and he wouldn't let me bathe unless he was in the room watching me. And I brought Jolly Ranchers.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and one time when I was at work again, this creepy old man came and told me that if I wasn't happy with my boyfriend, that he would take me out back and I could give him a BJ, as if that would make my life better. And I brought the nerd clusters also.
Hi, I'm Greta, and when I was 9 years old, I watched my puppy get run over by the mailman, and when I went to see if she was okay, I saw her eyeball that had come outside of her skull. And I brought the Sour Punch Bites.
Hi, I'm Carol, and when I was in 1st grade, I was raped by my brother's friend in my own motorhome, and the police did nothing about it, and I brought mini muffins.
Hi, I'm Greta, and when I was in junior high,
You see what I mean with Carol? Every time Carol comes back, I'm like, Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh God, Carol. Carol, baby, get behind me. I know. I'm like, Carol, I am here for you, Carol.
the girl that I thought was my best friend was actually just using me to get close to my brother. And when she started dating him, she stopped being friends with me, and I had no other friends. And I brought the muffins.
Those aren't muffins. Hashtag trauma bonded.
Because all of our boyfriends cheated on us with the same girl.
That was supposed to be our friend.
But at least we have a candy salad. Healthy queen.
We're so healthy.
Carol. Yeah, I will say, like, there is trauma from your shitty, pimple-faced, how a 16-year-old boyfriend cheating on you. And then there's, like, what Carol went through, which I'm like, oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, also, this girl here who has a couple instances where she's like, yeah, when I was at work and an old man would basically be like, give me a blowjob, or he'd be like, hey, I wanna fuck you. And she's like, and I told him that I was a minor and he didn't care and he said he would come back. Like, that is also very typical. That is very, very, very typical of being a teenage girl and adult men being like, yeah, that's fine. No one has to know. Or that's okay. Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? You're so pretty. I'm sure the boys must be lining up. They must be lining up for you. Are you a virgin? Are you a good girl? I don't have a boyfriend, but I do have a Glock. Yeah. So I don't know. Okay. This is kind of, I think, maybe the millennial in me where I'm still working through, like, I did not grow up where this was something that people were doing, where they were posting their posting their traumatic moments where like they make this video that's silly, but it's actually really dark. But also maybe this is maybe, you know, it being something that is productive, that can again further contribute to our understanding of like how commonplace this shit is. You know, like it's processing it, but it's also talking about this stuff openly rather than just carrying it with you your entire life, and then you become an adult and you're so deeply damaged. So I do like what we always talk about are the differences between Gen Z and older generations, and how Gen Z talks a lot more about mental health. They talk more openly about abuse, about mental illness, about just trauma. And the hope is that when we identify how culturally wide this shit is, that we can take steps so that this is not the reality, like that it's not normalized, that it's not something that future generations will grow up and these two will be their just commonplace experiences. A few weeks ago, I went to the grocery store for 2 items, and a guy in the parking lot said, "I like the way you look," followed me into the store and around the store, growling and muttering stuff. I will never show fear to the fuckface who's doing this, but I broke down when I got home. Thankfully, I have an amazing husband who I called while I was in the store and helped me when I broke down. I'm so sorry. That is, that's horrible. That's horrible. And it's like, you hear adult women share those stories. You hear adults share those stories. And then you also hear like these girls being on TikTok going, "Hi, my name is Carol, and here is a fucking horrible thing that happened to me as a child." And then follow that up with, "Here's a fucking horrible thing that happened to me as a child as well." And the thing is, Carol is the type of person, like of the 3 of them here, in just kind of identifying that Carol is the girl who someone like Epstein and Maxwell would have set their sights on. Understanding that Carol has already been sexually abused as a child, comes from a lower income background, that she is very vulnerable, and that's the type of person that they would see and go, "Oh, this person has already been deeply, deeply exploited, so we can just continue to exploit them." Caroline, I'm a guy. When I was in high school working at supermarket, I had a coworker who was also in high school. She was 16, and the amount of 50-year-old plus men that tried flirting with her is insane. Yes, and I'm sure that as she got older, and by that, like into her 20s, I don't know how old she is now, that probably lessened and lessened, because she was 16 years old then and a prime target, you know, the ideal target. And I'm sure as a 30-year-old, she experiences less of that, less of creepy old men coming up and preying on her. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah. Back in high school, I had a girlfriend. She told me some old dude came up to her and was hitting on her and shit, and talked about how big her breasts were. Bro, I mean, that's the other thing, is like, because of how puberty and development works differently in each person, it's like, oh my God, I remember in high school that the girls who had their periods earlier than most of the rest of us, or were developing earlier, and my God, oof, being a 13-year-old with full breasts and how that must have just been difficult. The girls that got boobs first. Yeah. It's like, I experienced a special type of creep because I was a little Asian girl. But I don't think I really had boobs until senior year of high school. Junior high, I just didn't have to deal with that. But anyway, okay. Well, let's go. Let's move on and talk about another topic.